All right, guys, we're on. We're officially on. I don't know if they can hear us. Hopefully they can, but I'm so happy that you guys came. I don't know some of you. I know some of you guys just from being in the gym. So we had wanted to just set this up and create this and chat with you guys because there is so much, I get it, confusion around exercise and food and diet and health and metabolic conditions and all the things that can make us confusing. So we really wanted to just open up a conversation and maybe talk about some things that are applicable to you guys that can help support you, that are kind of maybe old science or not true. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I practice functional medicine right in Garden City. My office is right in Garden City here on Long Island. And I work with primarily 99.999% of the practice is women that are dealing with thyroid distress, inability to change their body composition, polycystic ovarian syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, weight issues, eating disorders not otherwise specified, kind of the spectrum of things, people that can't put on muscle, like all the things that you may go to a doctor for. I see that, but the treatment is a little bit different, right? You normally go to your conventional doctor looking for pharmaceutical. That's not the field of functional medicine. It's more about let's try to figure out what's going on and then come up with a strategy. So that's really what I do. I've been doing this now for about 7 years and I love it. It's fun. It's complicated. I will say that. I work with sometimes nutritionists, people that are like, I'm confused by what you're saying. So we're going to kind of debunk a couple things that are confusing for people from the fitness space in terms of anti-inflammatory diets, pro-inflammatory diets. So I just want to get a sense if you guys are comfortable. You don't have to, but if you're comfortable, are any of you guys dealing with like a condition that's preventing you from getting to a physical goal? Like Hashimoto's, thyroid stress, weight issues. Anybody that's like, yeah, I'm dealing with something that I'm here because I can't figure it out. Yeah, we'll talk about that because I want to make that helpful for you guys. I think the first thing that we'll dive into is, I'm trying to think, I want to get to know you guys a little bit. I guess maybe what we can do if it's comfortable is ask some of you guys if you're comfortable sharing, like what's something you want to learn from today? Because I can talk about anything. I'm very I'm scatterbrained, so if I get off topic, but I want to support you guys in terms of the specifics. We'll touch on food, we'll touch on anti-inflammatory, we'll touch on pro-inflammatory. I was talking with Dan last week about injuries, right? Sometimes we can't hit a PR, we can't do something physically. There could be an underlying injury. So we'll talk about all the things, but I want to get to know you guys.
Use so we did our
okay, we can use that
together, so you guys can use some of my that we're fixing.
Yeah.
You know,
I love that. So we'll share with you. You can do the start one. Yeah. So Diana had come in just kind of open and receptive to wanting to feel better and just really be optimal. There was not a lot that was wrong, maybe a couple of things that were wrong, but she was saying there's some things I think that need tweaking. We did comprehensive blood work, which we could talk about that, but the comprehensive blood work is really fun. People like it. It looks at stuff that traditional doctors don't order. Vitamins, B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B7, zinc, iron, iodine, selenium, CoQ10, hormones, testosterone, estrogen. There's 3 different versions. Pregnenolone, progesterone. So we'll use Diana because she's open to sharing. We kind of go down the rabbit hole and we figure out what's working, what's not working. And in Diana's case, she was napping a little bit. She was having some cat naps throughout the day.
2-hour naps.
She was napping a little bit. And then she also had some blood work findings that were having an inability for her to clear what's called histamine, allergies, sinus congestion, postnasal drip, people that go, could be silent reflux, could be histamine issues. It stems from a condition called mast cell activation syndrome. So really the whole point, I don't want to overwhelm you guys with all of this, but my kind of role is to figure out what's not working and how to figure out a strategy, a natural remedy to support the person with supplements, herbs, dietary changes, and then obviously lifestyle stuff. So if you guys want to share, I would love to learn a little bit more about you, maybe something that you're looking to learn today so that I could help support that.
Question.
Yeah.
So the blood workup that you do, how is this different from like you see these things on the internet that test your microbiome and they send you a kit home and then how is that different?
Yeah, there's a lot of testing out there right now, especially in the functional medicine space. There's GI maps, there's doctor's data, there's mycotoxin tests. A lot of those are helpful. but sometimes they're not. Sometimes people spend a lot of money, truthfully, a lot of them are out of pocket, to try to find things that are actually not applicable. And so the testing can become very comprehensive in the functional medicine space. People love to do that stuff, but I like blood because blood is like what's available right now. Like if you looked at like the tiering of what would be the most important, blood would be top, urine, saliva, and then you start to look at some other testing, microbiome testing, species. You can kind of profile different types of critters. They're helpful, but sometimes they're more used when we can't find an answer, looking at all the things to explore first. It's kind of like, let's do all the natural stuff first. And then if we're not getting to an answer, we may want to implement something like a specific GI maps test or IGenics, you know, for different things. There's so many of those, but unfortunately, New York is a very state. They're very strict with their medical policies and their politics. So you follow the algorithm of what's traditional. That's why, for example, why don't you go to your doctors and they do all the blood work? Like, why is that not standard of care? Why do you have to seek elsewhere? Because it's an algorithm. You go to your thyroid doctor for thyroid concerns. You go to a gut doctor, gastro, for gut. It's not blended, unfortunately. And so that's where people get a little confused and they need more support because they're like, I am blended and I am integrated and there's something not here. So, yeah, that's kind of the thing that we could talk about in terms of, you know, specific testing, but people, I will be honest, I've had people that bring me stacks of lab testing and they haven't found an answer. So not always the best clinical thing to start with, but it is possible to do that stuff. Usually it's an out-of-pocket cost for the patient.
Not the first doctor I've heard about.
Yeah, yeah.
My own doctor told me, go to Las Vegas, Florida, they can do more for you there.
Yeah, it's true. Unfortunately, New York is very, and I don't need to bash anybody, right? Like there's a system to things, but it's a diagnosis code and the diagnosis code provides coverage of your insurance. And if that doesn't meet the criteria, then there's no problem. Versus actually your injury is going to take 9 weeks, not 6. We'll only give you 6 approvals. It's kind of governed by your insurance, which is not governed by health or you as a person. It's just what we're willing to pay for. So it leaves people a little bit unavailable to actually find answers.
So I'm a cancer survivor, and then when I started dealing with my oncologist, at the same time I started going to integrated doctors and to do integrated medicine. But they never acknowledged it. They said it's not true, no need it. So I stopped telling them what the integrated doctor was ordering, and the blood test he was ordering was amazing.
Yeah.
All the details and the things he found out, it was like, but I stopped telling them because they said that's not true. You don't need this. You don't do it. That's scary. You just.
It's a different philosophy, unfortunately.
Yes.
And we could spend a whole session on that and go down the rabbit hole, but it's probably not applicable. Just know when you walk into your doctor's office, it's like walking to the grocery store looking for a car. Don't expect that, right? Like it makes people mad, but it's kind of like, what's the expectation? You're not going to get integrative, functional. It can make people feeling very upset. So definitely that's a big kind of topic as well.
So I mean, clearly, like what you're doing is, you're looking like to fix that root cause.
Yeah.
So like, just like blood work, I'm just curious, like, how frequently, like a year, every year, would you like want to assess that?
Yeah.
And you maybe can dive into like just like some of like really key markers and why you're looking at certain.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
Definitely. And I'd be happy to also give to Dan and Diana like a requisition form that's a sample that can share with you the possible options that you can get done. But definitely, so let's talk about what some of those things are, because that was going to be part of today's topic. We'll talk about inflammation markers. That's a big one. So something like an ESR, okay, this is the name of it, ESR, that stands for erythrocyte sedimentation rate. It's basically measuring how sticky or clumpy the blood is, which is often sometimes the first sign of inflammation. Also HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. That is an acute phase liver protein. It's a protein that comes out of the liver. Think of like a fireman that comes out of the firehouse looking to respond to something outside. They're both broad spectrum. They're both broad spectrum. So they're not specific to where's the inflammation coming from. It doesn't tell us that. It just tells us, is it there or is it not there? It doesn't tell us this is from your shoulder or your neck or your back. It could be autoimmune conditions. It could be physical ailments. It could be so many different kind of things driving that. So inflammation is a big one. And most of you guys are here, you're exercisers, you're in the gym, you're doing things to support your health. A lot of times the two things that I would say if you're in the exercise space that you want to look for are the adrenal glands and your thyroid. And they are connected. They are connected through something called the HPAO, hypothalamic pituitary axis. You guys don't need to know that, but it's basically my brain sending signals to my thyroid, to my adrenals, to my ovaries, and then back up the chain. A lot of people in the fitness space were performing and were energetically giving. Those organs are both energetic organs. They're involved with metabolism. They're involved with immune function, they're involved with energy system. So people would want to look at the adrenal glands, cortisol in particular, and something called DHEA sulfate. DHEA is another one. I'll give you the list if you're like, it's like alphabet soup, right? You don't have to know it, but, and then thyroid distress. You know, it used to be for people that would come into the practice or even in textbooks, thyroid concerns were in adults over the age of like 45. Women, not true at all. I have 3-year-olds that come in with thyroid dysfunction. I have 7-year-olds that have hypothyroidism. So the point is exactly, if you're following the traditional algorithm of what's to be expected as per textbooks, I mean, all of you guys have professions and you do things and you're like, yeah, on paper, right? In theory, that's how it should be. But then in the real world, it doesn't follow suit. You know, so that's exactly it as well. Those are the two conditions. If you guys are saying, I think I need to learn more about myself, where would I look? Definitely the adrenal glands and definitely the thyroid. Vitamins and minerals are huge too. So from a perspective for people that are here to learn about anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory foods, anti-inflammatory foods, we all know, refined carbohydrates, simple sugars. It's, you know, we have Starbucks cups. I don't know what's in those cups. Hopefully not like pumps of like sugar-free, blah, blah, blah.
They know better.
We know better, right? But, you know, a lot of times that stuff is those are pro-inflammatory foods, right? We know that. When you start to dive into clinical nutrition therapy, there is no one food that is inflammatory as like a rule, because each food affects the body differently. So let's just take an example of someone that has thyroid stress. They don't do well with certain foods that contain what's called goitrogens. Goitrogens are foods in the brassica family. So like eggplant, broccoli, peppers. We think those are healthy foods, right? Shouldn't everybody be eating vegetables that are green? Not if you have kidney stones, not if you're somebody that produces oxalates, not if you're someone that has inability to actually produce, to kind of convert thyroid hormone. So it's kind of like a loaded question that there is no one size fits all, right? It's kind of like doing an exercise program. Well, what should I do? What are your goals? What's going on with your body? Are there injuries? You really want to customize it to your tissues. What I will say though, in terms of anti-inflammatory is superfoods. A lot of people do well with superfoods, and there's not a lot of like negatives to things like moringa powder and turmeric powder and blue-green algae, spirulina, chlorella. There's not a lot of people that have sensitivities to superfoods for a lot of reasons. So that's something like I usually implement greens powders. I recommend people to do like a greens powder. Some of them do have Brussels and broccoli, but we really want to customize it to what are your specific needs based on your specific health. Something I will say for a lot of my women from a food perspective is that we undereat for the goals. A lot of times we think we're exercising, we're working out so hard, and then we don't actually nourish our body with foods that are supportive. And that's more of a woman thing, I would say. That's more of culture and conditioning and like a physique that we're trying to achieve that can hurt us sometimes. But food is so important. And I would say that probably from a nutrient perspective that can cause inflammation is if you're under eating. If you're ripping open your sarcomeres, if you're ripping open your muscle tissue, if you're ripping open and creating inflammation and then you're not putting in nutrients to repair that, you're basically sitting in an inflammatory cascade. So you really want to make sure that you're eating things that could support you when you're rebuilding tissue, you're rebuilding glycogen, you're getting enough protein. to help support you. And that doesn't have to be animals, right? Some people are like, well, I don't need animals. You don't have to. It could be plants. There's many different things there that are anti-inflammatory. So I definitely recommend making sure from an anti-inflammatory perspective that you're getting enough stuff in terms of food. Something else I also see for people that they kind of do wrong is a lot of dairy. A lot of guys after, I know when the cafe, they used to have a cafe in here. They don't have it anymore, but whey, right? Like a lot of people think I need whey for my protein shake. I just exercise, I need whey. Yes, whey is bioavailable. It's the most bioavailable form of protein. And it's also the most inflammatory type of protein. So it renders the bioavailability less. So a lot of guys are like, I need 25 grams of protein. I need 35 grams. The renal threshold, AKA the kidney, can only hold on to about 35, 40 grams of protein at one time. So you see a lot of people doing a ton of protein, a ton of protein, a ton of protein. You don't need that much. You probably need that much, but spaced out. You still want to get the protein. It's just not 50 grams in one shake and then space it throughout the day. You'll be better off with that because your kidney doesn't process over a certain amount of it. The reason I'm bringing this up is because dairy is a big fitness protein shake method to come in terms of what we eat. And it's really, really causing problems for people in terms of their mucousy. They're like snotty and stuffy and clearing their nose. They have that postnasal drip. Dairy will cause acne for women. It stimulates something called insulin growth factor, which sometimes can cause pimples for more so women and men. And it's bloating. We're the only mammals on this planet that consume dairy from another mammal. And whey is a byproduct of dairy. Okay, so sometimes I really endorse from an anti-inflammatory perspective, you can eat meat. If you're somebody that eats meat, eat your meat, eat grass-fed, get good quality sustained. But if you're going to be doing things that are in packages, I do recommend more plant-based versions of things. So that's one thing. Like dairy, if you think about it, animal proteins, they shouldn't sit on a shelf for 4 months. Animals are real. Right. You shouldn't have something that could be packaged and it's a meat stick for 6 months. I mean, it's real food, right? So that's something else to be mindful of too, is for some of my people that are like, I do drink a lot of whey and I think it helps build my tissue. You actually won't get, and the argument with a lot of guys is, I need the protein. I got to build, right? Or women, I need the protein. You're actually not getting that 25, 30 grams because it's inflammatory. You're eating it and then you're mounting an immune system response. You'll see this more with little kids that have eczema and allergies and skin issues. They cannot. It's called an Aip diet, an autoimmune protocol diet for people that have autoimmune conditions. They can't tolerate dairy. That's one of the things on there that's absolutely off the list. So dairy would be one of the things I would say for you guys. Eat your food, but don't get like packaged flour versus dairy.
That's why with Practitioner, I think we align so well. But one of the things that we teach you guys during the nutrition challenges is not going to the middle of the aisle and buying stuff. Stay to the perimeter.
Definitely.
Or your vegetables, your eggs, your proteins, if you're eating meat, stuff like that, and very minimal going into the middle of the supermarket. That's all the processed stuff that we're not going to digest as well, right?
There's really nothing there. If you think about like the aisles, like cereal, packaged bars, like there's really not much there that is helpful anyway. So shop the perimeter is a great easy step if you're trying to make some changes. One of the other things that I will say that people get a little bit confused about is fruit. Fruit does contain fructose. Fructose is fruit sugar. A lot of people think, oh, I need so much fruit, right? And you look at their day and you're like, you ate 3 fruits, you did 20, 40, 60 grams of fruit sugar. That will cause high cholesterol in the liver. So high carbohydrate diets, even fructose, can actually create the liver to produce more cholesterol. A lot of people think it's 80 science. It's like, it's old science that, oh, fatty meats and fatty stuff is why I have cholesterol issues. It's actually oftentimes high carbohydrate diets that cause the liver to synthesize more cholesterol. Now, the reason I know that is because I've had many men that are diabetic, fully diabetic. Their triglycerides are through the roof. Their cholesterol's in the 300 units. Their lipid panel is atrocious. and I put them on ketogenic diets. They're eating fat, they're eating meat, they're eating all the things that they're like, my doctor said I can't have this. I've got high lipids, I've got high cholesterol, my arteries are clogged. And it drops their cholesterol profiles amazingly. So, if we think about it for those macro counters, for people that are tracking their protein, their carbs, and their fats, you just ate 60 grams of fruit sugar and you only did maybe 55 grams of protein. So by default, that puts you at a metabolic disadvantage. You're eating more sugar. Think of it like brass tacks. Think of it like at the end of the day, yes, we have different glucose, galactose, maltose, fructose, all these different sugars, but sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar at the end of the day. It's better than eating whatever you eat, right? Like maybe Gushers or whatever we eat, like a donut. But don't be fooled by that, because a lot of people, I remember when the cafe was open, some of the women, I would chat with them after, and they're like, I don't understand. I'm working out so hard and I'm doing all the right things. And I'm like, but what are the right things for you, right? And then we would dive into their nutrition and say, you're eating more sugar in your day, 4 fruits a day, 80 grams of sugar, and you're only eating 35 grams of protein. Of course you're not going to hit the goal. Now, I'm not just talking about sugar from a perspective of weight, but immune system dysregulation. When our blood sugar goes above a certain number, our immune system can drop by 75% for 2 hours. Your white blood cells, literally, they run away. And so that's really why people that are sugar bears, forget the composition, right? That's something we can adjust for people's body. But we want you to feel healthy and be healthy internally. And your immune system does not do well with high sugar consumption.
Most of the question going back to dairy. So what's your feeling about a yogurt that has not a lot of sugar, not sugar free, but that has organic and it's a clean yogurt, only because there's a lot of protein.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Like the yogurt debate, is yogurt, if you're getting like a plain yogurt, like a skier brand or something that's Icelandic organic, it still has A1 beta casein in it, which is the compound that's putting a fire in the body. It's still pro-inflammatory. So it may be no sugar, maybe it has 7 total carbs. It may have, 15 grams of protein, and it's organic, but that doesn't change the constitution of the proteins that are in the actual dairy, that when they're in our body, our immune system gets revved up. I will say though, for people that are like, I don't want to give up everything, not all dairy is created equal. So you may think about removing cow dairy, but keep sheep and keep goat, because those are A2 casein protein. You'll find in Whole Foods, if you ever check their their dairy section, they'll say A2 milk or A2 beta casein. Those proteins are much more user-friendly in our human bodies, and they're much more bioavailable to us. If you think about it from the perspective that cows they're forced to eat corn, they like grass, they're injected with herbicides.
That's grass-fed.
Yeah, grass-fed is good, but grass-fed, that's still better quality. But if we're thinking about what would be the order, I would say sheep, goat, and then good quality cow. That's the way to do it.
And casein, that's a better form of, even though it's still.
It is a little bit of a better form of whey. Definitely. Casein is a little bit smaller. You'll find that people often do casein before bed. That's kind of the recommendation. It's a little bit of a slower process to kind of be liberated into the tissues. So yeah, my thoughts are, this isn't about this is why nutrition's hard, because we can demonize everything. We can make it bad. We can say tomatoes are awesome, and then next week they're horrible for us, because it depends on the condition. Tomatoes are bad for people that have eczema and immune system skin rashes. Tomatoes are great for men that have prostate cancer. So it's kind of like know the audience, right? And that's why nutrition is not cookie cutter. And, don't make it complicated. Like start somewhere, okay? Start somewhere. But that's where the clinical part comes in of okay, each organ has its own set of rules that it abides by. And so that's what we want to know, is what organs for you are not optimal, and then what's the right food for those organs. So that's a really good question clinically, because that's a big debate. A lot of the questions that are confusing, rightfully so, they are, because there is no black and white. It's like 1,000 shades purple and green in there. You know, there is no like, this is an absolute statement. It just depends on the person. Some people do tolerate dairy well. They don't have any issues with it. Some people are very mucus producing. Their skin is bad. They are running an autoimmune component. They're bloated from it. That would be where I would say maybe you limit it. You have once per week. Okay. Even starting there, like looking at your day and seeing what are you actually eating. If you're like, oh yeah, dairy for breakfast. Oh yeah, dairy for lunch. Oh yeah, dairy for dinner. That would be something to be mindful of. It's good, better, best. You don't have to cut out massive food groups, but just make some small progress stages there. So dairy is a big one, not getting enough nutrients. People are lacking veggies. They're lacking phytonutrients. And the phytonutrient foods are foods that contain enzymes and cofactors that help run the cells. And so I would say across the board for everybody, people are missing out. You know, my mom, she'd be very mad if she heard this, but she would make us salads when we were younger. And there was like 2 tomatoes in there and like a cucumber. And I'm like, what kind of salad is this, right? Like I want a salad. I don't want a bowl of lettuce. So that would be something else too to be mindful of, is that a lot of people are not getting enough green things. And you really should be eating them every single meal. You can supplement with powders. You could do both, a combination of both. Amazing greens, green first. There are tons of that stuff out there that are all good quality. I would definitely recommend for people to up their veggies, because by default, that's another thing that we're missing, and those provide the actual vitamins to the food. So macros are like protein, carbs, fat. Micros are oftentimes missed in the fitness space.
So what do you think about juicing fibers and still feel there's benefits?
Yeah, I like juicing, but there again, don't have 4 juices a day. Like I pick up some of these juice brands, 40 grams of sugar. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in 40 grams of sugar, because I know that that'll hurt my immune system. I know that will, you know, and well, it's natural sugar. It's still conducive to weight gain, and it's still conducive to inflammatory conditions. So maybe Monday is like a celery juice, and then Tuesday is maybe mix it up. A juice a day, but like variety each day. Not like back to back to back.
So kind of to speak like on like, you know, vegetables and fruits and things like that, do you feel that there's like benefits eating seasonally?
Definitely. Absolutely. So this gets into like nitty gritty stuff with like Dr. Giordano's work, which is eating for your blood type, like blood type diet, how to eat for your blood type, eating for your culture, right? Like sometimes if we look at where we ancestrally come from, people can handle a lot more. Like for example, Italian cultures in Italy, you see them that they eat carbs all day long. They eat pasta. It's in their culture. Our food sources, unfortunately, in America are tampered with. So we don't get to do that as easily. You go to Italy, you could drop weight and eat all the things. But the point is that there are a lot of research that shows about like looking at your lineage and looking at what foods work for your body based on just your own makeup. Like I have women that I work with that are from Ecuador, and they eat a lot of fruit and it helps them. So there again, we want to take into consideration, yes, eating seasonal. I bought cantaloupe the other day and it was like rocks, and then it just went from rocks to molded. You know, they have to spray it and shelf life it and all the things. So you do want to eat when the foods are available, like fall. There's pumpkins and acorn squash and butternut squash and color. Definitely, I recommend that. You know, trying to get foods that are not really native to the area right now. They're going to have to be sprayed or injected with something to make it last to get to us on the shelf. Good question. Okay, let's do a little questions from the virtual.
Yeah, I think the first question is very interesting.
Genetic testing is something that usually gets done from a specific doctor that is looking at specific things. There used to be things we can test for genetic tests, like methylation issues for people that are not methylating their genes. It's called MTHFR gene mutations. People that sometimes are not getting pregnant, they have infertility, they're struggling with something. That's where we can do some genetic testing, but that's not really my field. That would be more somebody that would work with the genes that are perhaps not working. Like if it's a pregnancy gene, you go to a fertility specialist regarding that stuff. Insurance doesn't cover a lot of that stuff, unfortunately. Genetic testing is often expensive and out of pocket for the patient. If someone has a specific thing they're looking for, maybe I can connect them with the right person, but I don't do a lot of genetic testing. I used to do MTHFR gene mutations. There's 2 genes people have issues with. Now I just make sure that everything I provide to people is methylated. Okay, so methylated just means how available is my body to use something that comes in. Methyl is just putting something called a CH3 group on a cell. So if I'm a cell, I have horns, I'll stick my horns out, and those horns let the body know I'm available. Use me. I'm methylated. Take me. Some people, from a genetic perspective, they don't methylate. They don't have those horns up, and it leaves their cells not rendered to be utilized in certain ways. You'll see that in what's called the homocysteine folate pathway. It's so important for women that are trying to get pregnant because our spinal cord and our brain is all B vitamins. If we look at babies, the most important thing that you'll see for a lot of women is B vitamins. Like, what's the big deal? They're just vitamins, right? They're just B vitamins. Well, because they make up the brain and spinal cord of babies. They make up something called the neural tube, which is the first primitive remnant of an actual growing brain and spinal cord. So people, women, I had a woman that was in the practice, her and her husband both had methylation issues and they couldn't get pregnant. And at the time when it was more approved, the thing about it is I'll order it and the patient will get a $3,000 bill. If they want it, if they're willing to do that, there might be something, sure, we can look at. But it doesn't always matter because the point of the story is assume that people have methylation issues and give them the right form. If you give someone something methylated and they don't need it, it's not going to hurt them. If you give something to them and it's not methylated and they need it to be methylated, that's where you get into problems. So a way around that is to just make sure that whatever you provide for someone, whether it's enzymes or supplements, are actually methylated forms. It'll say, for example, B12, methylcobalamin. Okay, cobalamin is B12, methyl, that prefix before that, it seems silly, right? It's just like a word. That word means a lot to pregnant women and to pregnant men trying to get pregnant. So men trying to get their women pregnant, I should say. So that's a big thing in terms of the genetic factors, but they'd work with someone more for the field of the genetic thing that they're struggling with, I guess. Yeah, collagen is different than protein. Collagen's a little bit different in terms of the makeup of it. When you look at protein, what is protein, right? Like, what is it? It's amino acids. It's baby, think of letters. The letter A, my name, E-L-Y-S-E. Those are letters and they make up my name, Elyse. What we call the protein, Elyse is the protein, and the amino acids are the letters that make up my name. So you get different base pairings. Protein is different than collagen. Collagen tends to work a little bit better for like skin, joints, hair, nails. Protein has a little bit more widespread function for immunology. So protein, I know a lot of people think protein's just for fitness buffs, right? Like people in the gym. Women and men have a metabolic need for protein if you're just walking and living and breathing on this earth. A lot of people get that wrong. I know when I was first working with a couple, like when I do intake forms with some of my women, I ask them to share with me their diet. They're maybe getting 40 grams of protein in the whole day. And then they're binging on sugar and they're wondering why. The body at the end of the day does an inventory. It's going to go backward and say, and this happens around 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night. It's going to go, do they get enough protein, carb, and fat? If not, if the answer is no, 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 it's going to make you get a hunger signal. You're going to have ghrelin, a hormone called ghrelin that comes out to make you feel hungry. And the quickest interpretation of our brain is to have sugar because it's fast energy. It's like, we need it and we need it now. Like, you've been avoiding us, you haven't been eating all day, we're going to make you crave sugar. A lot of people, what I would suggest is if you're a sugar bear, if you're a carbohydrate-rich person, if you're struggling, you're probably not getting enough real food. And protein is probably one of the macros. So protein deficiencies lead to chronic nutrient deficiencies and feeling like you're constantly wanting to eat.
I know like with our members,
Yeah.
when we start to look at the nutrition, it's the biggest thing that
For a lot of people, it's very common. And it's interesting because women don't crave it as much. Like, I've been doing this now for 7 years, and my women are just not as inclined to crave protein in our makeup for some reason. Men are more like, we want chicken and fish and turkey meatballs. But that will lead to not only problems with your tissue and your repair when you're working through an injury, it's your entire immune system gets compromised. Okay, so I think we think of protein as like optional if you're in the fitness space. It's a requirement for your immune system, for your health, for everything. So
Women complain that men lose weight.
yeah,
When a woman goes,
that's a true complaint.
she goes on the treadmill for an hour, comes home and eats a salad.
Yep.
A man goes to the weight bench, goes home and eats a chick, the protein, women eat salad. I think that's
Yes.
one of the problems.
The cultural conditioning of the feminine energy is less, restrict, don't hunger, be small, be little, don't eat. And men, gains, baby. Men are like, let's make the gains, let's eat all the food. And it's acceptable,
I
right?
don't think they're gonna fall off if they lose weight.
Exactly. And that's not true. That's not true. Right. It's wild. It's wild how that works. Restriction is not the answer to weight loss. Women seem to think that. They think, I want to be less, so I will eat less. That's the way to do this, right? It's completely opposite. You need to eat more of the right things. That's how you'll change your kind of composition. So, the days of restriction, the unfortunate part is you restrict. You can maintain that for a period. And then what happens, usually about 5 weeks into a restriction phase, you will go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Your hypothalamus, which is a governing vessel in your brain, it's a governing gland, will start to spew venom at you and certain hormones to say, eat. And that's how women get stuck in the binge restrict cycle of, I'm trying to eat, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to eat less, I'm trying not to eat, I want to lose weight. And then they could do that for a little bit of time, and then all of a sudden the hunger signals get revved and ramped up, and then they're out of control with their food, and it's not their fault, it's physiology. It's physiology. So I think you're speaking to that. Men's hormones are different. Women are like 3 times more likely to develop thyroid stress, which the thyroid gland is a metabolic work. So our tissue, definitely, I think the nutritional component's a huge factor, but I also think if we looked at like the organs and how they process as well too, women we get more dysfunction in the systems that are involved with the energy and metabolism. So that also plays a little role as well. Yeah.
Just a question.
Sure.
What can you explain enzymes?
Yeah.
I mean, is it a supplement?
So I'll give you something to follow. On YouTube, I have a 45-minute video about what are enzymes. Definitely check that out. Follow that.
What's your YouTube?
Just myself. Yeah, just myself. Yeah.
But to answer that question, I don't know if
Yeah.
this is correct,
I'll give
but
you my email address.
what made so much sense with Dr. Tursi putting on enzymes was that we have natural enzymes in our body.
Every single cell has like thousands of enzymes per one cell, like 25,000 enzymes per
So
cell.
we digest them, we kind of metabolize more than a supplement depending on.
Just in case it doesn't work.
Yes.
That's how I understood it.
Yes.
And it makes so much more sense.
And
They're already in us.
they're in us. So enzymes are in us. Everyone's alive and here because we have enzymes. I'll give you the kind of cliff notes of it. Each cell has enzymes in it, and that's what makes them work. That's what tells the cells move. You have to go there. You have to get that's damaged. Go through apoptosis. Make something new. Without enzymes, we're rendered null and void. We as a culture are so conditioned for supplements. Supplements help, but they're not the actual crux of the cell's ability to move. Most people have heard of enzymes from a digestive enzyme perspective, but you have metabolic enzymes, immune enzymes, lymphatic enzymes. Every single body cell has an enzyme associated with it. Digestive enzymes are so popular now and so prevalent now is because basically we're enzyme deficient. We cook our food that cooks out the enzymes. We are depleting our enzymes in our culture. We live in a culture where sometimes stress will deplete our enzymes, our energy enzymes. We're just not getting enough of them. We don't eat from the earth. We don't eat real food. We don't eat the same amount. We're depleting. We're kind of like not living our lives the way we should live them. So that can make us enzyme deficient. A lot of people think supplements. Supplements only work if your enzymes say, come on in. So oftentimes people come in, they bring me a suitcase worth of supplements. We look in their blood work, they're either very deficient or they're floating around the blood, not being used.
So what if you look at someone in their liver, sorry, I don't know the language, like overrun?
Yes.
And how could you determine which supplement is?
Yes. There are liver enzymes that you can look at in the blood. There's 2 enzymes that are important. I will say for people too, that's another very common thing is liver, stagnated liver, gallbladder, gallstones, sluggish livers, people's livers that aren't processing. Everything we eat, drink, breathe, everything we consume and ingest has to be hepatometabolize. It's all processed by the liver. And so the liver is open 24 hours a day. It's doing so much for us. Liver is an organ that a lot of people have some stress around, and that can cause, this is a little bit more esoteric, but anger. It's the organ of fire. This is more Eastern medicine, elemental theory of medicine. It can make people feel very moody. What? Snappy, irritable, moody, craving carbs, because the liver and the gallbladder actually emulsify fat. Think of Dawn dish soap. If you have a really oily dish and you put it under the sink, well, Dawn dish soap takes care of it. If you don't have Dawn dish soap and you put that oily dish under the sink, nothing happens. People that have liver stagnation crave carbs left and right.
And how would you dissolve something?
Enzymes. Yeah, so in my practice, I have about 150 bottles of enzymes that are custom to each organ. Each organ has its own set of enzymes. Adrenal enzymes, thyroid enzymes. There's different herbs that can support those things as well. Like milk thistle is amazing for liver.
And it tastes so good.
And it's good. It's really, really good. I tell everybody, drink milk thistle tea. People don't have allergies to milk thistle. It's not something that's like, oh, am I going to have an adverse response? The name is misleading. There's no milk in it. As we talk about dairy, right? There's no milk in it, but it's so good to support keeping that liver clean from everything that we're bombarded by.
What is it called?
Milk thistle. M-I-L-K.
We'll share.
Yeah, Dan will stand a couple of them.
We'll find some of the stuff. And some of the stuff that Dr. Tursi's talking about is stuff that she has me on actually in.
I think I have milk thistle tea in my purse right now.
I do take that.
And the greens and stuff like that, and they're
Yeah, that's
so
helpful.
good. I've been drinking a lot less coffee, even though there's coffee in here.
Yeah.
But just from like the mixed milk thistle, like I'm not, and some of the enzymes I'm on, I'm not as I'm not napping for 2 hours anymore.
Okay, if you like that, that's a good start.
Right? And then, you know, like mixed milk thistle or like green juice, like I'm drinking that throughout the day.
There's just
I'm going
ways
to the bathroom a lot more.
Yes, you get more activity.
You know?
We have 22 feet of intestines. If you are not pooping every single day, where is that going? It's sitting in you. You're bloated and you reabsorb it. I talk about poop a lot in my practice. We have to. It's part of health. It's part of health. It's, you know, sometimes when I look at people's intake forms, constipation, they're taking Miralax, which is polyethylene glycol. It's antifreeze. Of course you're going to poop. But by default, you have to move your bowels every single day. 22 feet. I mean, that's probably like the 3 of us together, right? In terms of height, maybe 4 of us. So that's a big part. Milk thistle can stimulate a little bit of the body's ability to excrete. It's not contraindicated in a lot of conditions, which is helpful, and it's pretty user-friendly to consume. It's kind of bland. It's kind of bland. It doesn't have like a...
The one I have some, it smells so good. So just the aroma of it.
Yeah, the herbs.
Oh my God, I love it.
And we're in tea season too, by the way. So Alvita, A-L-V-I-T-A brand on Amazon is the brand I get. It's herbal. Alvita, A-L-V-I-T-A. That's the brand I order from. It's just organic milk thistle. You can Amazon it too, trial it. 1 cup a day, hot, cold. Really supportive.
Breastfeeding, my nutritionist, I use at the time.
Usually fenugreek is better, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like that, and like 2 other things that are absolutely horrible.
Yes.
So, especially if you don't involve leather and there's so much stress on the.
Exactly. So not having an organ that's part of the digestive system will put other stress on other organs. The liver and the gallbladder, they have a connection to the pancreas. Okay, they meet at something called the ampulla of Vater. I know it sounds very strange. It sounds like something from Star Wars, but they meet. What happens when someone has gallbladder or liver issues, we'll make that this right hand. It puts pressure on the pancreas because the person's body says, wait a second, I can't digest fat. What else can I make them eat? Carbs. So they're craving carbs because the organ is not able to process the food. But there's a lot of stuff to do with that. There's enzymes that can help the liver and the gallbladder as well. So there again, that's why people, a lot of women too, we blame ourselves, we shame ourselves, we go down the rabbit hole of like, I can't figure it out and willpower it out. And sometimes it's just dysfunction. It's organ stress. You know, we have a lot of stress there. So much to talk about. Any other questions, guys, that we want to talk about? I know we're kind of going fast, but there's so much.
thyroid tests and stuff. Sure that, you know.
Yes. That is a very common thing too, Tina, that people bring me blood work and they're like, my doctor looked. And I'm like, yeah, no, they didn't look. They looked at two things. They looked at the TSH and T4. That is two things that are involved with the thyroid. It's not really fully encompassing. So, you know, hair loss, it's a hard one. One thing I will say, and I don't want to say anything about what's going on in the world with all the, you know, the talk of C19 because we'll get flagged. But the point is that there's a condition called post-viral syndrome. If you have an infection, any viral infection, it can create hair loss. It can create problems with the hair. So something to be mindful of is people that had C19, we'll call it that, they did develop a massive amount of immune system stress that caused the hair follicle to die and come out. That may be it. But also it could be that perhaps there wasn't enough figuring out other areas that may be causing the hair loss because, you know, iron deficiency anemia, lack of nutrients could be one of them. The thyroid is one of the governing vessels where the hair comes out when it's low, and the lateral third of the eyebrow, like the outside of the tail, those hairs start to become sparse as well. Thyroid, every single tissue, every single cell in our body has receptors for thyroid tissue. Every single cell. So when women have thyroid stress, everything goes awry. They're like, I'm not pooping, my bowels are sluggish, my hair is thinning, it's falling out, I'm not focusing, I'm brain foggy, I have to reread things again. It's because, why is it so widespread, right? Like, why not all just one problem happens? It's because every single tissue has receptors. So my invitation to you, Tina, would be maybe explore a little bit deeper about why that could be. It may be really thyroid, it just wasn't fully addressed. There's reverse T3, there's T3, T4 free in total, antibodies to the thyroid, anti-TPO antibodies, TSH. There's like 17 different tests to look for. We all do. It's like our normal, right? It's our normal. Exactly. So normal, physiologic normal versus like our normal. We forget sometimes. It's like, oh my gosh, this is just normal to me. This is like what I'm used to, right? Like that's where we want to support you. And you don't have to have damage or dysfunction or full disease just to feel optimal. Some people are just like, this is not really optimal. It's bothering me because I'm on my phone at work and I'm keeping people up at night, you know, little things. It could just be a little tweaks. Yeah.
So that's one question.
Yeah. Yeah, so eczema is an autoimmune skin irritation. It's usually it usually happens from the detoxification pathways not being activated. It's common in little ones, like yay high. It is autoimmune. There's connection there. There's a diet to explore. It's called the AIP diet. AIP, Autoimmune Protocol is the name of it. I will say it's a little hard, okay, but it's worth it for kids that are really, really flared up. There's no nuts on the AIP diet. No peanuts, no cashews, no nuts. There's no dairy at all. It's basically just fruit, certain fruits, vegetables, and meats. There's no like seeds, there's no nuts, there's no legumes, there's no lectins, there's no beans, there's no garbanzo beans, there's no legumes at all allowed. But it helps. No wheat, no corn, no gluten, no soy, no dairy. It's a hard diet.
You have two foods.
You have tons of.
It's very paleo.
It's very paleo. It's extremely paleo. It's very paleo. But that's what helps because truthfully, those are foods. If we really look at them, it's not our body's fault, right? Like people are like, I don't do well with gluten. Nobody does. It's toxic for everybody. But then there's levels to it. Some of us don't feel the effects of it where we're like, oh, there's a lot of distension. Some of us do feel problems with it. And it could be widespread. It doesn't have to be digestive. So a lot of people think that food allergies have to be in this region. Like it has to be a problem here. No, you could have a food allergy and it could be showing up as just, I'm tired all the time. It could be showing up as I'm not clear. I can't focus. So that would be my suggestion for her to explore the AIP diet. It's a little bit difficult. And also there's some enzymes that can support the liver as well, because often they're not clearing. They're not clearing stuff out. There's like stuff that's just harboring in little babies.
So that goes for eczema, psoriasis, I guess.
perioral dermatitis, eczema, anything that's skin related. Skin is often liver. When you see people that have a lot of skin things, I got bit by a bug, so ignore this. But when you see things that are like liver related, I don't know how. I don't know what crawled on me, but something did. That is always a congested liver.
Sometimes it's like here, like psoriasis.
Yeah. Yep. Psoriasis is another one too. There again, wheat, dairy, inflammatory foods. Yeah, but anytime someone has skin stuff, it's coming from the liver. Lack of processing in the liver, I think of it that way. Any other questions? Yeah.
So if I heard you right, and you said that basically, I mean, like supplementation is really not necessary if you're kind of treating food as like medicine, right?
Yes.
So when you're working with somebody, how much of that is mindset? How much is that?
Mindset?
Well, kind of, your relationship with food.
I mean, I love it. I love that question. I was just excited that you said that. So I was like, is he asking about mindset? Absolutely. Yeah, because I was like, on attention. Absolutely. So there is a body of literature. Okay, it's real. It's not woo-woo. It's not food-woo. It's not like the stars will come out on the like third night of the month with the moon. No, it's neuropsychoimmunology. Neurology, psycho, brain, mind, thought, cognition, immunology. I just ordered a book. I have to check the name of it because it's brand new. I think it's called yeah, I have to look. I'll check that. But it is, well, there's a couple books. The Body Keeps Score is one of them. The Body Keeps Score is something Vander something. The Body Keeps Score. He's a really cool guy. I'll share my book recommendations with you. He's a PhD, MD, who used to treat trauma. Who used to treat all these things that people did, anxiety disorder, sleep disturbances, and he said, it's in the body. It's in the tissues. And your mindset affects your health is not, oh, here's my physical health and I'm going to eat really well. And then I'm going to just go exercise. And then I'm not going to address my thoughts. Like that will never work. You can be taking the best supplements in the world, the best enzymes, drinking the green juice, drinking your milk crystal tea. And if your mind is in a place that it's not thinking optimally, or it's thinking negative thoughts, or it's thinking low vibration thoughts, that's your reality.
Another Dr. Neva Marte, also
Yeah.
the bodies as well.
Yes. Women by default, this is a lot of times for women, this kind of goes into the mindset, is that women develop thyroid dysfunction more than men. And if you look at the energy of that or the mindset around that, it's because women are doing. They're momming, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're trying to be pretty and sexy and beautiful, and they're working out, and then they're also working full-time jobs, and they're also being masculine, and that will cause dysfunction in disease because the energy constitution of women, not that we're inferior by any means, but it's just different. So your mindset, your thoughts, the way your lifestyle is structured, being boundaryless or naked, as I call it, people that are just like, yes, sure, yes, sure, yes, sure. Like, you'll get sick. Of course you'll get sick. You can drink all the greens. We'll give you all the organic. We'll come to you with a farm. If the thoughts aren't there and the mindset's not there, you will absolutely stay stuck. Yeah. And actually, I worked with Dan. I'll share with you guys a little bit. I worked with Dan initially, just privately, to try to get some of my weights to go up a little bit. Like I was feeling like I wanted to change some stuff. And I think you were like, can't. He was calling me out on can't because I was nervous. I'm like, I'm stepping up to the squat bar. You guys need a buzzer. You need a buzzer, like a beep, beep. Buy a buzzer. I can't buzzer because that was one of the things I didn't even realize how many I can't do this. I can't do this. Is this going to work? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to go down and my knee's not going to work? And like all the thoughts, right? When you're trying to lift heavy, you kind of go through all the things of like, this could be great, but this could not be also great in terms of the weight. So the mindset is huge. It's huge. And I think we even did like a little
process.
We had a process.
Getting your mind
Yep.
prepared for what's.
And it worked. It worked because I was getting PRs left and right. So it's like, what did I do different? Nothing. Eating the same, sleeping the same, working out the same. It was just my mind around like, can we do this?
And we just had a conversation with a girl student, and for her, she is afraid of failing. We had a very good conversation, and then at the end of it, was like, well, now we're going to find every conversation.
Yep.
Because if you're failing, that means
You're winning.
You're pushing yourself past for a living.
Yes.
Right? We're also afraid to teammate, but really, if you're not failing, you're staying humble.
You're not growing.
Not what we do here, right?
Not at all.
So.
Not at all. That's so true. I think that the more I see it with people is as I get deeper into this work, I help them with their nutrition and their blood work and all the things, but I'm starting to explore more of that as well, because sometimes the way that they're talking to themselves or the way that they're thinking about something, or sometimes I ask them, do you think that you can heal? No. And then I'm like, well, we're not going to do anything today, because if you don't believe that you can heal, then you don't believe that you can heal. Like, your reality is your thoughts. Your thoughts create your reality. So your belief systems really, really matter, especially when you're healing. You know, a mantra I share with some of my women when they're struggling is that in the process of healing. Because it doesn't feel good when you're like, I'm healed, look, I'm perfect, right? You're not spiritually bypassing. You're not just like, I'm pretending to be something, but I'm in the process of healing. I'm actively working through that stuff. So it's very important mindset.
And that was the same journey that we experienced in Black, right? Working up 9 years ago, it was workout. And then we were like, okay, but why aren't they losing weight? Okay, then did back to certification, became so important because we realized, okay, our members need more. It's not just come here, work out, eat, and then eat, right? You guys are with us for an hour, and then eating for many more hours. And then after that, they're getting the similar results with nutrition and with workouts. He tells us that we can't do stuff. And then that's what it was.
Cue Tony Robbins now. Me too, because it's energetic weight, right? Like, it's like the stuff, like when people are saying I'm carrying weight, what does that mean energetically to some degree? Or I can't do this thing. It's true. It's like it's making up our life.
Realize that we struggle with this too. So working with Dr. Elyse, you realize that you're
It's like, yeah, I do, but how do I get out? Yes. Yes.
Take action.
Yep.
You know?
One of my favorite books, Untitled Chapter, my favorite book. But it's such a deep book because I don't remember which chapter it was, but I was reading it and she posed a question, or the author posed a question. If you listen to what your mind is saying, and then what's a different person to go through, your best friend, would you want to be friends with that person? And then I'm like, friends with that person, that is so mean the way that they're talking.
Yeah.
But that was me in my own mind. And I realized that that point was like, I really focus on the way I speak. I'm stopping myself from doing so many things that I want to do just because of the brain.
That was how I got that after I stopped. That moment, wait, when she had to figure out. How will this session go?
Right. Yeah, we're hard on ourselves. Oh yeah.
That was the moment where we could shift that language and reframe what's reframe what she actually thought about family, what she mindset wise that, you know,
It matters.
To get back on the bench and do the physical work.
There is no separation with your health and your mindset. They're blended. I think, and that's exactly kind of like the start of the conversation of like, what's different about conventional? Conventional is if it's not here to touch or see, it's not real. And then we're only looking in one spot versus we need to explore all the places. We need to explore the depths of your mind too. So totally.
Same happens to me. When I come here, I'm always afraid that I'm gonna fall apart. I have this in my head for some reason that I'm gonna fall apart. And then one of the days I will become a day, and then I was doing something, and he's like, you can do it. And then I started crying here because I cannot do it. And then he helped me and then showed me, you see, you do it. Like, you know, but I was, and then the next day, he said to me, can I record the video how you're doing this? And then I will show it to you. And then you'll get it better in your head that you can do it.
Yeah.
And then he did it, and I'm like, and then I cried more.
That's like your growth edge. That's what Jen was talking about. That's like that point of like, I could fail right now, but I could also do this and then level up, right, to the next thing.
Or the one of the ball where the golf, but the day is like, is that heavy enough? Is that heavy enough? And he kept saying it like to me. And then when I hear this from them, it's like, and then I don't feel scared anymore. Like I feel like,
Sometimes you borrow that from someone, right? Like when you're going through it, you forget and you borrow that their energy for a moment. Like, can you remind me of this? Like, can you remind me of the things? Because that will shift the frame.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, bye, Claudine. So nice. Nice to meet you. Have a good. Are you working out? Are you going to work out? Oh, okay. See you soon.
All right, I think we have maybe like one.
So allergies are a hot one, but allergies there again, sometimes the body makes an allergic response to something, not because it's a full allergy, but because there's inflammation somewhere else that now the body starts to cause, it starts to become hyper reactive to everything. So people develop allergies to foods that they see the most. People develop allergies sometimes when they're sick and they're eating. If you think of it like this, it's called molecular mimicry. It's a very strange concept, but if I'm sick with a cold and my body's immune system's out to fight and I'm eating a food, the foods can sometimes get kind of mistaken for, oh, we have to get rid of this cell. The immune system's on. So you'll find that allergies develop over time from oftentimes just inflammation or usually leaky gut syndrome. Someone that has leaky gut syndrome is that food comes in down the esophagus, it goes, and then leaks into the bloodstream because there's holes in the stomach and the intestines. So it's not that they have an allergy, it's that their body is responding to a food, making it look like it's a fake allergy. It's a pseudo allergy. It's an allergy from an inflammatory process happening in the gut. So my kind of invitation is we want to do a lot of gut work with allergies for people like that. And of course, remove inflammatory things for now, because think of it like when someone's living in a fire, like there's a fire in their body. The fire touches everything. Fire goes everywhere the minute it touches stuff. So sometimes that happens for the immune system, is that when there's one thing going wrong, it creates problems in other areas as well. So is it really an allergy? It definitely could be. Or is it a fake allergy from a response to something, whether it's a virus, a pathogen, or a predator? That could be very possible as well. There again, allergies, liver, skin. Okay, allergies, like topical allergies, people that have nickel allergies, they can't wear cheap jewelry. Sometimes there's a connection there. I won't talk about, never mind, I'm not going to say the word, silver flag. Never mind, different topic.
There's one question
Totally, yeah. So a lot of my women, they're going through changes, and you know, there again, that doesn't read the books. It used to be when you're in your 50s. Now I have women that are in their late 30s and having some changes with their body in terms of the hormones. The hormones jump off a cliff. They're riding, and then they go. Can you do natural hormone replacement therapy? Yes. Most things like progesterone is one of the ones that women, they feel the effects from. Their progesterone levels go down. Wild yam is something that can help them. Wild yam is usually how progesterone that's natural is sourced from. Absolutely, you don't have to do E.R.T therapy because some women are not candidates for that. Why? If they've had breast cancer, if they have certain cancers, they can't use pharmaceuticals like estrogen. So they're like, what am I supposed to do? Absolutely, there's some natural things you can use for that.
So like, and then what was your feeling on just training itself in terms of that role of like hormonal regulation, you know, kind of causal and that.
So So it's very interesting because a lot of people that are in the fitness space think that their hormones are high, and sometimes they're not. A lot of times my men are like, they look at their blood work and they're like, what? I work out, I'm so strong. Sometimes, depending on what's going on with the tissues, yes, you want to be lifting, right? Like you want to be moving and grooving because that stimulation of like even walking and pouncing and all that, you do stimulate what's called osteoblastic activity. Your bones can actually feel great. They say that for women. They're like, what's the best thing you can do for bone density? Pounding. Because that stimulates the bones, they grow. They're like, oh, we're doing something here. So definitely I think the exercise is so helpful. But there are other things too. I think the exercise paired with internal health is optimal is awesome because you can exercise all you want, but is that enough to keep someone out of menopause? Not necessarily. Or andropause for men? Not necessarily. So always do it. There's benefits to it, but sometimes there is a little bit of natural hormonal support that people do well with because just by default, the hormones drop. It's part of age, right? It's part of the life cycle of life. The hormones drop. And, you know, we used to think that sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, they're only for baby making, right? They're only for baby making and for like pleasure and stuff. They're not. They're for bone health. They're for heart health. There's metabolic needs to healthy hormones as we get older to protect us from having heart disease or high cholesterol and some of those things. So we need hormones. And there's ways to do it. To answer the question directly, are there natural things you could do? Yes. You don't have to be on traditional HRT therapy.
My last question. This is specifically for someone, special someone. They went on a calendar. It was 600 one week, 1,400 next week, 1,200 another week. You mentioned earlier about
Yes.
get to that point where you're really hungry. It's that binge crash.
Yes. Yes.
So you just go there and again.
So what happens sometimes when we're in a caloric deficit where we're trying to restrict the calories, sometimes we get so low with people that they're hungry and they're able to not listen to us, right? Like we've all had days where we're like, we're just working. Like we're working through the hunger, we're fine. That can only last for a certain amount of time. And then what happens is your hypothalamus, which is a governing gland, it starts to get concerned of like, are we going to be going lower? It almost like sets the signal of, are we safe? What just happened? Drop. So it purposely tries to send more signals to you to make you hungry so that you say, eat. It starts to panic. Your hypothalamus, it's the master gland, and it is such a powerful gland. Now, I've worked with women that have had eating disorders of all different types of versions, all different things, binging, purging, restricting, not eating, all the things. And what they find is they'll restrict. And there's a girl, if you're interested to follow, she's a PhD, Stephanie Buttermore. Okay, she's a PhD, she was in the fitness space, bodybuilder. She was shredded, maybe like 95 pounds. She gained 45 pounds plus, not on purpose, but because she was starving herself. She was starving. And the brain goes opposite because the hormones start to change. You start to produce something called ghrelin. Ghrelin and leptin, those are hormones that are like satiety cues of, am I full or am I hungry or what's happening? She was ignoring, because we can do that, right? We can do that for a certain amount of time. And then all of a sudden she was doing these cheat meals on YouTube and filming them 10,000 calorie challenges. She could not eat enough food to make her hungry. Her thermostat was broken. The brain gets a little bit kind of confused at that point until it starts to understand that we're safe and we're out of the restriction. The restriction will people start to still play with that. You can't live there. She gained 45 pounds. She talks about her journey openly on YouTube. And she was like, it was unsatiable hunger. She was so hungry. She was eating more than her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's also in the fitness industry. Jack Nippert is his name. Really, they're both very fit now. But she was miserable going through the process, but she couldn't control it anymore. And I always tell people, you cannot anger your hypothalamus because the minute that you do, it doesn't just easily revert back. And that's why for a lot of my women, and they come to me and they're like, well, I'm calorie restricting. I'm eating less. And I know that they can't go lower with their food. There's no way. I'm not going lower with their food. I tell them that there's no way we can go lower with your food for right now. Because what I'm not going to do is put you in a place of an eating disorder. I will not do that. So it's not food. We need to come up. That's where we would start for her too, for Stephanie. Let's explore the stories around culture and food. Let's explore what it means to feel small or lean. Let's explore what's going on there with external validation, because she was in the fitness space. She felt she had to be that way. She was like, I gained weight and I would go home and like throw up because I can't live that way. I'm on YouTube. I have 1 million followers. Like, so the point of the story is that we have to really uncover not the food, because it's the food is a secondary. The food is a byproduct of an emotional state of being. Food is a byproduct of an emotional state of being, of a story or of a coping mechanism or of a strategy, or it's never about the food, it's about control. And control is fear 100% of the time.
I know that your clients are also it's
Yes.
I have male clients.
Yes.
When they come to me at first, I give them suggestions on how they're eating. Shot. And I tell them, it's going to be out.
Yes.
Or be sure I should be eating.
Yes.
These guys are living off of it.
Yes.
Yes.
There's science behind this.
Right.
There's science. It cannot happen, because if it happens, I'll tell you what will happen. It'll work. You'll do it. You'll eat under 1,500. You'll lose a little weight, and then you'll be hungry. And then 3 months later, you'll be upset because you've gained it all back, because you haven't looked at the core of how do I learn healthy relationship with food? How do I get rid of those stories around cultural norms of society of what body should look like, what body should feel like? And anger is hypothalamus. And when you fight your hypothalamus, you will lose 100% of the time. It just doesn't work. It's such a powerful gland. It's controlling temperature and body rhythm and hunger clues. And think of it, like we make the term hangry, right? Like that's a real term. We can't turn the hunger off sometimes for people. Like it's like no matter how much they eat. So especially for men, there again, that's a story. That's a cultural society story of less me equals less food. It's the wrong answer.
Sorry. So, you know how we are nowadays, it's like, I wanted my results yesterday.
Yes.
So like, well, after Elyse here, it's like, well, so when should I really realistically start to see that what I'm doing is paying off? Like, how long do I have to stick with this?
A long time.
Yes.
That's my answer, because the reality of it is a long time.
Could you say that one more
Yes.
time?
A long time, right?
What do you mean? Long time.
If you're, there again, what I would reframe and I would invite to say, what's the rush to get there? Why are we rushing to be somewhere? We're in this for the long haul. Health and wellness is a long haul. And there's layers to it, right? Like we go and we make one goal and we conquer. And we make another goal and we conquer that goal. So, you know, I would really think about the story around, if you're rushing to get there, and I see this a lot with my women too. If you're rushing and you're rushing and you're rushing and you're rushing, I'm not doing my job to teach you enough then, because there is a component of, this is a long haul process. This is your health. There is no like, I want to be there. And then what happens? Then you're there and then they go back. They want to revert back. They're like, I made my goal. And then they go back to their old self. We have to uncover the layers there, because we want this forever. And it takes a long time. If you ask people, like, you know, both of you guys are fit and in shape. If you find anybody that you're like, you know what, I want to look like them, I would say, tell me who you want to look like and feel like them. And then you ask them, how long have you been working out? 15 years.
I mean, it's a
But
question
guess
that
what?
we
I'm not there.
get, we get that question asked all the time.
You know, it's easy. Just work out 500 p.m.
No big deal.
For 10
For years. It takes so long to build muscle. Like, I feel like it's kind of like spinach. You buy that massive bag of spinach and then you get it and you're like, that's all that came from here. That's what it is. It's like spinach. Our bodies are like spinach. So you could work out so hard, but it takes time. The adaptations take time. But guess what? Time's going to pass regardless. So in the time that passes, do you want to be working towards the goal or letting the time pass and just not working towards the goal?
And that's why we preach lifestyle, right?
Lifestyle.
Not like you guys are gonna come here and do 5 workouts and like, and keep having that, right? That's true.
We wouldn't be in business. We would just be given pills and see you later.
I mean, we do have that.
Right.
You gotta really put it, you know, really-
It's a magic pill that you take every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. So that's you asked some really good questions about like the mindset and the philosophy, like the hard stuff, right? They're hard questions.
Have
No,
Well, we're Dr. Tursi.
nice to meet you. I've seen the work because I know you guys have done stuff with squatting, like proper biomechanics of squatting. Yeah, I've seen the stuff.
We did a bunch of things like, well, last month.
Yeah, like last month.
Yeah.
That's a good one to do because, you know, people squat for 'em and it's bad.
That's,
It's bad out there.
yeah,
It's dangerous.
that's the reason.
Yeah,
It's not just. It's
follow it. It's a lifestyle. Thanks, guys. Hey, I'm so happy to meet you guys. Thanks for coming. It was fun. It was fun. I'm gonna come back because I'm coming for the muscle up. They know that. That's still my goal. And I know all of you guys can do it because I've seen it. Do you try to pull up? Do you try to do like a pull up?
Oh, she's so strong.
I know. I've seen you work out. Tina's so strong.
She's like, woo.
You're all of us. Everyone, we're putting in the work. But yeah, that's interesting. So I think that's it. What we could do definitely, Janice, if you have questions that people couldn't hear. Books, you know what I think we should do, truthfully? I think all of us should give a book recommendation.
Yeah.
Like our favorite books, because like I probably read, maybe, I haven't read some of the books you guys have read, but I would love to. That's on my book, my list. Okay, so I need to know. One book. Everyone give their favorite book
We
so we
can put
can.
up, posts.
Yes. We need books because the books are the mindset work that we can do by ourselves.
Especially at that. I read that one.
I can't with my books because they're highlighted, they're circled. I'm like asking questions, I'm answering. Yeah, that's Dr. Diadamo's work. That's basically eating for your blood type. Like depending on your blood type, some people are like meat eaters because they're universal O. Some people are like they should be eating more plant-based. It's hard to see if that. I don't know too much about that work. Like I've never done that with people, but there is research. Dr. Diadamo would be who I would refer that person to. It's like Dr. I think it's David Diadamo, D-A-M-A-O, D''.
It's very famous in Europe.
Stephanie Buttermore. Stephanie Buttermore. She's lovely. She's so smart. She's a PhD and she has a lot of background, like, you know, and yeah.
Thank you so much for sticking with us, Cam and Ernie. I'm gonna record this and post it. I'm gonna email comprehensive notes on today, so everything we discussed, hopefully I'll be able to, well, actually, this is just the stuff we recommended. But thank you for the questions. I think we got to every single one. And have a good day.
I'm gonna look up.
Yeah.